The Titan wasn't just any alien megastructure. It was the alien megastructure, an architectural marvel that spanned the size of a planet, orbiting a dying star at the edge of the galaxy. For thousands of years, it had been the linchpin of interstellar trade, a hub for the most advanced technologies, and a symbol of galactic unity. Its existence was a testament to the craftsmanship of the long-vanished Tishara, an ancient species whose knowledge was said to surpass the known limits of physics itself. No one thought it would ever crumble. But then, out of nowhere, the alarms began. I was in my workshop, deep inside the Martian colony, when the news reached me. As an engineer, I had no business in the diplomatic discussions or political maneuverings of interstellar affairs. I was just another cog in humanity's machine, working day in and day out to keep things running. My AI assistant, Dax, pinged the moment the galactic channels broke the news. "Commander Slate," Dax's calm voice interrupted my soldering. "The Titan has collapsed." I paused, holding my breath. That couldn't be right. The Titan was supposed to be eternal, indestructible. "Clarify that, Dax," I said, still staring at the delicate circuitry in front of me. "Collapsed as in what?" "The entirety of the structure has fragmented. Reports indicate a massive energy surge, but no clear cause. Casualties unknown." I dropped the tool and activated the holoscreen. The galactic feed projected across the room, and my heart sank as I saw the images. The Titan was in pieces. Its colossal towers, which had once stood against the backdrop of the stars, now floated as chunks of debris strewn across the void. Flames, as much as they could exist in space, flared from ruptured reactors. Smaller ships darted around the wreckage like ants, desperately trying to make sense of the chaos. From the reports, no one knew how many lives had been lost, but it was certain this was a catastrophe unlike any the galaxy had ever witnessed. Humanity wasn't the only species to rely on the Titan. The Xanthorans, the Ishvarians, the Gyraxians, each race had their own stake in it. It was a nexus for diplomatic negotiations, a trading hub, and even a cultural icon. Its collapse would send shockwaves through the entire galaxy, both literal and metaphorical. I stared at the images, half disbelieving. "How was this even possible?" Dax, analyze the data feed. See if there's any clue what caused the failure. Dax hummed for a moment before replying. Multiple conflicting reports. Some claim sabotage. Others suggest a natural deterioration of the structure, but... The AI paused. "There are inconsistencies." "Like what?" "Several reports mention energy readings that don't align with known power sources. Unidentified signatures, to be precise." I leaned back in my chair, my mind already racing through possibilities. Energy surges, unknown signatures. This was far beyond just an engineering failure. But I wasn't a galactic politician or a high-ranking military official. I was an engineer, one of the best, maybe, but still just an engineer. Then, as if on cue, my communication line lit up. The insignia of the United Earth Federation blinked on the screen. I tapped the receiver, and the face of Admiral Voss appeared, his sharp blue eyes staring through the screen with the intensity that only a man hardened by war could have. "Slate," he said, his voice gruff, "I need you to drop whatever you're working on. You're being deployed." I raised an eyebrow. "Deployed? I thought we were still months out from the next Martian development phase." "This isn't about Mars," Voss interrupted. "We've been tapped by the Galactic Federation. They need human engineers on the Titan. Fast." "The Titan?" I repeated, my mind racing to catch up. "With all due respect, Admiral, that thing's dust now. What could we possibly do?" "You can rebuild it," he said flatly. I blinked. "Rebuild it? Admiral, it took an entire civilization centuries to construct the Titan. Now it's in ruins, and the best minds in the galaxy are scratching their heads. How are we supposed to?" "Doesn't matter," Voss cut in. "The Federation's in a full-blown panic. They've been looking for a solution for weeks, and nothing's worked. Half their experts are declaring it irreparable. But there's pressure, and I mean serious pressure, from the Xanthorans and Ishvarians to get the Titan operational again. There's too much at stake. If we don't act, the galactic economy could collapse. We've already been called in. They want us to try. Who's they? The Galactic Federation. Apparently, someone on their council thinks humans are desperate enough to pull off what their advanced species can't. I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of the moment. We weren't considered the most advanced species by any means, and humanity was always seen as somewhat reckless, bold, but unrefined. But in times of crisis, maybe that was exactly what the galaxy needed. How long do we have? A week, Voss replied, and I felt my stomach drop. A week? You heard me. They'll give us all the resources we need, but we have 1 week to rebuild the Titan. If we can't, it stays dead. This was insane. Rebuilding a structure like the Titan in a week. It wasn't just impossible, it was suicide. But something in the Admiral's eyes told me that this wasn't up for debate. Orders had already been given, and the mission was in motion. I stood up, pushing the chair back. All right, send me the team and specs. I'll do what I can. Voss nodded, the screen going dark. Dax, I said, already moving towards my equipment locker, pull up everything we have on the Titan: structural data, energy systems, blueprints, you name it. Already compiling, Dax replied smoothly. As I packed my gear, the weight of the task began to sink in. This wasn't just another engineering job. This was history. This was survival. The Titan was more than just a collection of metal and circuitry. It was a symbol. And if we didn't restore it, humanity's reputation in the galaxy would take a hit from which we might never recover. And so, with only a vague plan and a gnawing sense of dread, I prepared for what could be my most impossible mission yet. A week to rebuild the Titan. The galaxy's most advanced races had already failed. Now it was humanity's turn. Getting to the Titan was the easy part. The Galactic Federation had cleared a route for our team, escorting us past the wreckage of what once had been the busiest star lanes in the galaxy. Now, it was a wasteland of debris and scattered alien vessels, most of which had been idling for weeks, while the Federation tried to make sense of the disaster. As the human transport ship Resolute pulled into view of the Titan's remains, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. From a distance, it looked even worse than the images had suggested. The Titan had been massive. Its central structure alone was the size of Earth's moon, while the outer layers and auxiliary stations extended even further. Now, it was in ruins. Entire sections had disintegrated, leaving jagged edges where the precision of alien engineering had once reigned. Gaps the size of small cities floated in space, and sparks of raw energy arced between the fragmented remains. My team and I stared at the sight in silence. For some of the younger members, this was their first time seeing the Titan in person, and even for those of us who had worked in space for years, it was a humbling moment. Commander Slate, one of the technicians, Jenkins, whispered from behind me, "I don't know how we're supposed to fix that in a week." I didn't have an answer for him. The Resolute shuddered slightly as it docked with the makeshift command center that had been hastily constructed on one of the intact segments of the Titan. As soon as the ship's airlock hissed open, we were met by a delegation of Xanthorans, tall, slender beings with silvery skin and elongated heads. Their purple robes shimmered in the artificial light, but their expressions were unreadable. Their large black eyes focused intently on us. "Commander Slate?" one of them asked in a voice that sounded more like a vibration than actual speech. "That's me," I replied, stepping forward. "I am Overseer Talon," the Xanthoran said, inclining his head slightly. "You and your team are late." "We're exactly on time," I said evenly, glancing at the clock on my wrist. "Our briefing said we had 1 week, and we're ready to get started." Talon's dark eyes blinked once, slowly. "You may have 1 week, Commander, but your task is beyond human comprehension. It took the Tishara centuries to build the Titan, and you believe you can repair it in days." "With all due respect, Overseer," I said, "we don't believe we can. We know we can." The Xanthoran gave no response, but I could sense the skepticism radiating from him and the other members of his delegation. They didn't trust us, and they certainly didn't believe in our plan. But that was fine. Humans were used to being underestimated. In fact, we thrived on it. "Very well," Talon said after a moment. "You may proceed. But know this, commander failure will not be tolerated. If you cannot complete the task in time, the Federation will have no choice but to consider alternate solutions." I didn't need him to elaborate. "We'll get it done." He nodded, stepping aside to allow us access to the command center. Inside, it was chaos. Dozens of alien species bustled around, their voices creating a cacophony of languages and tones that were almost overwhelming. Holographic displays filled the room, showing detailed schematics of the Titan, energy signatures, and repair strategies that had all been tried and failed over the past few weeks. I took it all in, and then I shut it out. "Dax," I said under my breath, "run a scan of the structure. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with here." "Scanning," Dax replied, a faint hum in my earpiece as the AI began its work. The rest of my team fanned out, setting up their own equipment and reviewing the plans we brought along. We weren't just here to fix the Titan, we were here to rebuild it. And to do that, we had to think differently from the other species. While most of the galactic engineers relied on tried-and-true methods, humans had a knack for improvisation. We didn't have centuries-old blueprints or advanced alien technology, but what we did have was ingenuity. Where others saw obstacles, we saw opportunities. The first thing we had to do was stabilize the core structure. Without that, there was no way we could rebuild the outer layers. The problem was that the core was dangerously unstable, and any attempt to repair it had been met with violent energy surges. But I had an idea. "Dax," I said, my voice low as I examined the schematics, "can you calculate the structural integrity of the core if we reroute the auxiliary power to bypass the damaged sections?" "Calculating," the AI replied. After a moment, it said, "If the bypass is successful, structural integrity will increase by 42%, but the power flow may become unpredictable in the damaged sectors." "That's a risk we'll have to take," I said. "Jenkins, get the team ready. We're going to start with the core." Jenkins, a grizzled engineer who'd been with me through more than a few close calls, raised an eyebrow. "You sure about this, Slate? If we screw this up, we could blow half the station to hell." I nodded. "I'm sure. We don't have time to second-guess ourselves." He sighed, but nodded back. "All right, let's get to work." We spent the next few hours preparing for the operation. It wasn't just a matter of fixing broken parts. There were entire sections of the Titan that were beyond repair, and we had to find ways to work around them. Some of the alien engineers looked on in confusion as we welded together makeshift support beams and patched up wiring with materials that they would have considered primitive. But that was the beauty of human engineering. It wasn't always pretty, but it worked. By the time we were ready to reroute the power, the command center had quieted down. All eyes were on us. I stood in front of the control panel, my hands hovering over the switches that would redirect the energy flow. If we failed, the backlash could destroy what little was left of the Titan. But if we succeeded, we'd be one step closer to making the impossible a reality. "Ready?" I asked, glancing over at Jenkins and the rest of the team. "As ready as we'll ever be," Jenkins muttered. I took a deep breath, and then I flipped the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. The lights flickered slightly, and the hum of the station's systems grew louder. And then, boom! The deck beneath our feet shook violently, and sparks flew from the overhead panels. I grabbed onto the railing as the entire station seemed to lurch to one side. "Status," I shouted over the noise. "Dax, report. Power flow has been rerouted. Structural integrity holding at 60%. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Good. Now let's see if we can get this thing back online." But even as I said it, I knew something was wrong. The energy readings on the screen were fluctuating wildly, and strange symbols began to appear in the data feed, symbols that didn't match any known language or code. "Dax, what is that?" "I am unsure," the AI replied. its usually calm voice tinged with uncertainty. These symbols do not correspond to any known galactic languages or energy signatures. It is possible they are pre-Titan. Pre-Titan? You mean from before the Tishara built it? Affirmative. A cold shiver ran down my spine. We had assumed the Titan was just a piece of advanced technology, a marvel of engineering. But what if it was more than that? What if there was something ancient buried within its core, something that had been dormant for centuries, until we woke it up? I stared at the strange symbols on the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. What have we done? The symbols kept flashing on the screen, dancing erratically as if mocking our efforts. Whatever we'd activated was way beyond our understanding, even with the Titan's blueprints and the most advanced AI at our disposal. My stomach churned as the implications began to sink in. "Commander," Jenkins said, his voice strained, "I'm getting energy surges across the entire grid. Some of the outer sectors are flickering in and out. We might have a chain reaction on our hands if we don't stabilize it fast." "Dax, isolate the sectors showing the highest fluctuations. Can you figure out where these readings are coming from?" The AI processed for a moment before responding. The energy patterns appear to be originating from a deeper layer of the Titan, below what is visible on the schematics. "I suspect this section was not included in any known blueprints for the Titan." "A hidden section?" Jenkins cursed. "This just keeps getting better." I didn't want to admit it, but the situation was spiraling out of control. It was hard enough trying to stabilize the Titan, but now we were dealing with something ancient and unknown. Whatever this hidden layer was, it seemed far older than the Tishara and far more dangerous. "We need to get down there," I said, already moving towards the nearest access panel. Jenkins grabbed my arm. "Commander, with all due respect, we don't know what we're dealing with. If that section's been buried for this long, there might be a damn good reason for it." He wasn't wrong. Every instinct I had was telling me to walk away from this, to leave it alone and focus on the task at hand. But my gut told me that if we didn't get to the bottom of this mystery, the Titan would collapse long before we had a chance to repair it. "I hear you," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "But if we don't find out what's causing these surges, there won't be a Titan left to fix." Jenkins hesitated, then gave a curt nod. "All right, but if we're going down there, we do it smart. Full hazard gear, no shortcuts." "Agreed." I turned to the rest of the team. "Dax, get us a path to that hidden layer. Jenkins, I want you and Vega with me. The rest of you, stay here and monitor the situation. If things start getting worse topside, pull us back immediately." As the team moved into action, suiting up and prepping for the descent, I felt a strange sense of anticipation building. This wasn't just about repairing a station anymore. Something much bigger was at play here, and I had a feeling that whatever we found beneath the Titan would change everything. "Pathway identified," Dax said, highlighting a series of access tunnels and lifts that would take us deep into the Titan's core. "Be advised, structural integrity in these areas is highly compromised." "Noted," I said, pulling my helmet over my head and securing the seals. The three of us, Jenkins, Vega, and myself, headed toward the access hatch. The rest of the team watched us go in silence, a mixture of worry and curiosity on their faces. I couldn't blame them. This wasn't in the job description. The journey down to the hidden layer was tense. The deeper we went, the darker and colder it became. The once bright corridors of the Titan were now little more than crumbling, dilapidated tunnels, with sections of the walls torn apart by whatever cataclysm had struck the station. We had to climb over fallen beams and duck under exposed wiring more than once. "Dax, how much further?" I asked, wiping sweat from my brow despite the freezing temperature. "Approximately 100 meters. The hidden section should be just beyond the next bulkhead." I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. We were close. When we reached the bulkhead, I could feel the tension in the air. This was it. Whatever secrets the Titan held, they were just beyond this door. "Jenkins," I said, motioning to the control panel. "Can you get this open?" Jenkins knelt down, his hands working quickly over the alien console. "It's fused. Give me a minute." I kept my eyes on the bulkhead as he worked. The walls around us were pulsing faintly with energy, as though the station itself was alive. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, though by what, I had no idea. "Got it," Jenkins said finally, stepping back as the bulkhead hissed open. We stepped through, and what we saw on the other side made my blood run cold. The hidden layer was vast, far larger than any of us had expected. Rows upon rows of strange machines lined the walls, their surfaces covered in the same mysterious symbols we'd seen earlier. The air was thick with static, and the hum of energy was almost deafening. But it wasn't the machines that had caught my attention. It was what was inside them. Suspended in glowing, translucent chambers were figures humanoid, but not quite human. Their features were elongated, their skin a dull metallic sheen. Their eyes were closed, and they appeared to be in some kind of stasis, but there was no mistaking it. They were alive. "What the hell are those things?" Vega whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum. "I don't know," I said, taking a step closer to one of the chambers. The creature inside was motionless, its face serene, but there was something unsettling about it. "But I think we just found out why the Titan collapsed." Jenkins was already scanning the nearest chamber, his fingers flying over his handheld device. "Commander, these energy readings are off the charts. Whatever these things are, they're drawing power directly from the Titan's core." "That explains the surges," I muttered. "They've been feeding off the station's energy. But why?" "Maybe there's some kind of backup system," Vega suggested. "Or a failsafe, in case the station ever needed to be powered down." "Or maybe," Jenkins said, his face pale as he studied the readings, "they're a weapon." My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "These energy signatures, they're not just drawing power. They're storing it, building it up for something. If they release it all at once." He didn't have to finish the sentence. The implications were clear. Whatever these creatures were, they were far more than just passengers. They were a ticking time bomb. "How long until they reach full capacity?" I asked, my mind racing. Jenkins shook his head. "Hard to say. But if we don't shut them down soon, the Titan's going to blow." I cursed under my breath. We were running out of time. "Can we disable them?" "Maybe," Jenkins said, glancing around at the machines. "But I'll need to override the entire system. And if I screw it up, well, let's just say it won't be pretty." I looked at the rows of chambers, the strange creatures suspended inside. We didn't have a choice. If we didn't shut them down, the Titan and everyone on it would be destroyed. "Do it," I said finally. "We'll cover you." Jenkins nodded, his hands already moving as he began the override process. Vega and I stood guard, our eyes scanning the room for any sign of movement. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel the pulse of energy growing stronger by the second. And then, just as Jenkins reached the final sequence, something shifted. The air around us seemed to vibrate, and the hum of the machines grew louder. The lights flickered, and I felt a cold chill run down my spine. "Commander," Jenkins said, his voice tight, "I think we've got company." I turned, and my heart stopped. One of the chambers had begun to glow brighter, the figure inside slowly stirring. Its eyes flickered open, and for the first time I saw the cold, calculating intelligence behind them. It wasn't just a weapon. It was alive. The creature in the chamber moved, its limbs twitching as if awakening from a long, restless sleep. Its eyes, a dull metallic hue, scanned the room with a terrifying calmness. The air around it seemed to ripple as it flexed its hand, the translucent barrier holding it captive shimmering briefly before dissolving into thin air. "Jenkins," I barked, my voice low but urgent. "Status update now." "I'm working on it, Commander." Jenkins' fingers flew across the control panel, his face drenched in sweat. "But whatever I just triggered, it's waking them up. I can't override it." The chamber's energy pulse surged, lighting up the row of dormant figures one by one. More of them began to stir, their eyes opening, their bodies straightening. Each motion was slow, deliberate, and all the more terrifying for its methodical nature. It was like watching machines come online, except these machines could think, feel, and most troublingly plan. "Vega, watch my 6, I ordered, stepping forward. I knew we had to act fast. If Jenkins couldn't shut them down, we had to at least buy time before they figured out we were no match for them. "Commander," Vega said, his voice tight with fear, "we don't even know what these things are capable of." I glanced back at him. "We don't need to. We just need to slow them down. You got that?" Vega nodded, his hands tightening on his weapon. He was good in a crisis, but this was pushing the limits of what any of us were trained for. These weren't just aliens, they were something else entirely. Something built for a purpose that was well beyond our understanding. One of the creatures stepped out of its chamber, its feet touching the ground with barely a sound. It stood a full head taller than me, its body sleek and metallic, but strangely fluid in its movements. Its eyes, those cold, unfeeling eyes, locked onto me. "Jenkins," I said through gritted teeth, "whatever you're doing, do it faster." "Almost there," Jenkins replied, his voice strained. "Just need a few more seconds." The creature tilted its head slightly, as if analyzing me. Then, without warning, it raised its arm. Energy crackled around its hand, and before I could react, a bolt of blinding light shot toward me. I barely dove out of the way in time, the energy slamming into the wall behind me, leaving a molten crater where I had just been standing. "Shit!" Vega shouted, firing his weapon at the creature. The bullets ricocheted off its metallic skin, sparking uselessly as the thing advanced on him with a chilling indifference. "Fall back," I ordered, grabbing Vega's arm and pulling him away from the creature. "We need to regroup. Jenkins, now would be a great time to tell me you've got this under control." "I've got it," Jenkins yelled, his face twisted in concentration. "Just one more." Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered, and the hum of the machines grew louder. The air seemed to vibrate with energy as Jenkins hit the final sequence. And then everything stopped. The creatures froze mid-step, their bodies going rigid as the energy around them dissipated. For a moment, the room was eerily silent, the only sound the faint crackling of dying circuits. Jenkins slumped back, breathing heavily. "System override complete. They're offline." I exhaled, my heart still pounding in my chest. "Nice work." Vega let out a shaky laugh, lowering his weapon. That was too close. We stood there for a moment, catching our breath as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. We had barely survived the encounter with these creatures, and the station was still on the verge of collapse. Whatever they were, we had stopped them for now. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. "Commander," Jenkins said, his voice calmer now but still tense, "I managed to disable them temporarily, but the system is too complex for a full shutdown. They're going to come back online eventually. We need to find a more permanent solution." "How long do we have?" I asked. Jenkins glanced at his scanner. "Hard to say. Could be minutes, could be hours. But when they wake up again, they'll be fully functional and pissed." I cursed under my breath. We were running out of options. "Dax," I said, activating my comms, "we've got a situation down here. The station is housing some kind of biological weapons. They're drawing power from the core, and we've only managed a temporary shutdown. Can you advise?" There was a brief pause before Dax responded. "This new information changes the parameters of the mission. The energy patterns from these entities are unlike anything seen before. If they are indeed connected to the station's core, their reactivation could trigger a catastrophic failure throughout the Titan. You must sever the connection between them and the core." "How do we do that?" Jenkins asked, already looking at his handheld device for answers. "There's a central control unit deeper within the hidden layer," Dax said. "It is likely connected to both the station's power grid and these biological entities. You'll need to shut it down manually." "Of course," Vega muttered, "because nothing can ever be easy." I nodded grimly. "All right, Dax, send us the coordinates. We're going to have to move fast. As Dax uploaded the data, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the task ahead. This was no longer just a repair mission. The fate of the Titan and possibly more rested on our shoulders, and we had precious little time to act. "Jenkins, Vega, you with me?" I asked, turning to my team. They both nodded, though the tension in their faces was hard to miss. "Let's finish this," I said, setting off toward the control unit. The trek deeper into the hidden layer was even more unnerving than before. The energy pulses seemed to intensify the closer we got to the control unit, the walls vibrating with a barely contained power. The air was thick with static, making it harder to breathe, and the oppressive silence weighed on us like a physical force. After what felt like an eternity, we reached the central chamber. The control unit was massive, an intricate web of glowing conduits and alien symbols that pulsed with a faint, eerie light. At its center was a console, similar to the one Jenkins had hacked earlier, but far more advanced. "This is it," Jenkins said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The heart of the Titan." I stepped forward, my eyes scanning the console. "Can you shut it down?" Jenkins hesitated. "It's going to take time. This thing is way more complicated than anything I've ever seen." "Do what you can," I said. "We'll cover you." As Jenkins got to work, Vega and I took up defensive positions, our eyes scanning the room for any sign of movement. The tension was palpable, and every second felt like an eternity. But just as Jenkins began the shutdown process, the room shuddered violently. "Commander," Dax's voice crackled through the comms, "the energy surges are intensifying. The station's core is reaching critical levels. You must hurry." Jenkins cursed under his breath, his hands flying over the controls. "I'm going as fast as I can." The ground beneath us shook again, harder this time, and I felt my stomach lurch. We were running out of time. And then, with a final keystroke, Jenkins slammed his hand down on the console. The lights flickered once more, and the hum of energy began to die down. "Shutdown complete," Jenkins said, his voice filled with relief. But before we could celebrate, the ground beneath us gave way, sending us plummeting into darkness. I tumbled through the void, my stomach twisting as the blackness swallowed us whole. My hands reached out instinctively, grasping at nothing, the sensation of falling amplified by the silence around me. It felt like we were plummeting forever, weightless, directionless, but I knew it could only be seconds. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the fall stopped. I landed hard, the impact jarring my bones. The air was thick with dust and a strange metallic tang, and I could hear the distant hum of the Titan's core, deep and steady, like the heartbeat of some ancient beast. "Commander, you good?" Vega's voice called out in the darkness, his breathing heavy but steady. "I'm good," I replied, coughing as I pulled myself to my feet. "Jenkins?" "I'm here," Jenkins groaned from somewhere nearby. "That wasn't in the mission briefing." "No kidding," I muttered, flicking on my helmet's flashlight. The beam of light cut through the dust, revealing the jagged, uneven floor beneath us. We had fallen into some kind of cavern, no doubt another part of the station, hidden beneath the surface. The walls were lined with cables and conduits, snaking upward into the darkness above. It felt like we had descended into the very guts of the Titan. "Everyone check your gear," I ordered. "We need to figure out where we are and how to get back topside." As we regrouped, the weight of our situation began to sink in. We had shut down the control unit, but the station was still on the verge of collapse. The creatures we had temporarily disabled would wake up sooner or later, and now we were trapped in the bowels of the Titan with no clear way out. Jenkins was already scanning the area, his handheld device beeping softly as it mapped the surroundings. "I'm picking up some weak signals down here," he said, frowning. "Looks like there's a secondary power grid running through this area. Might be a backup system for the station's core." I nodded, trying to make sense of it all. If the core's backup is down here, we might be able to access it and stabilize the station. At least buy us some more time. Vega glanced around, his flashlight sweeping the room. "We need to hurry. Those things aren't going to stay asleep forever." We moved cautiously through the cavern, following the path of the cables as they wound deeper into the station's underbelly. The walls were slick with condensation, and the air grew colder the further we went. Every so often, the floor would shudder, a reminder of the station's fragile state. After what felt like an eternity, we reached the end of the passage. There, looming before us, was a massive doorway, carved from the same dark metal as the rest of the station. It was covered in alien symbols, the same kind we had seen in the control unit. "Another sealed chamber," I muttered. "Jenkins, think you can open it?" Jenkins knelt beside the door, his fingers flying over his handheld as he tried to interface with the alien technology. "This one's more heavily encrypted than the others," he said, his brow furrowing in concentration. "But I think I can crack it." As Jenkins worked, Vega and I stood guard, our eyes scanning the darkness. My mind raced with questions. What was behind this door? Was it the key to stabilizing the station, or was it something far worse? "Got it," Jenkins said suddenly, standing up as the door let out a low hiss. Slowly, it slid open, revealing the chamber beyond. We stepped inside cautiously, our flashlights illuminating the space. It was a massive control room, its walls lined with consoles and displays, all of them flickering with faint, unreadable text. At the center of the room was a massive, cylindrical structure, pulsing faintly with energy. "This must be the core backup," Jenkins said, his voice filled with awe. "It's still active, but barely." I approached the core, my heart pounding. "Can you interface with it? Stabilize the station?" Jenkins hesitated. "It's risky. If I make a mistake, I could overload the core and cause a meltdown. But if we don't do something soon, the station's going to tear itself apart." I nodded. We didn't have a choice. "Do it." Jenkins set to work, his fingers flying over the console as he accessed the core systems. The room hummed with energy, the lights flickering as the core responded to his commands. As Jenkins worked, Vega paced nervously, his eyes darting between the doors. "Commander, we've got company," he said suddenly, his voice tight with fear. I turned to see the creatures no longer dormant slowly advancing toward the chamber. Their eyes glowed in the darkness, and their movements were no longer sluggish or mechanical. They were awake, and they were coming for us. "Jenkins, how much time do you need?" I barked, raising my weapon. "Just a few more minutes," he shouted, his hands trembling as he worked. Vega and I took up defensive positions at the entrance, our weapons trained on the advancing creatures. They moved with terrifying speed, their bodies gliding effortlessly across the floor as they closed the distance between us. "Here they come," Vega shouted, firing a burst of bullets at the nearest creature. The round sparked harmlessly off its metallic skin, but it slowed just enough for me to get a shot in, aiming for the glowing power source embedded in its chest. The creature stumbled, its body convulsing before collapsing to the ground. "Target the power cores," I shouted, taking down another creature with a well-placed shot. But there were too many of them. For every one we took down, two more seemed to take its place, their cold, unfeeling eyes fixed on us. "Jenkins, we're running out of time," I yelled, my heart pounding in my chest. "Almost there," Jenkins shouted, his voice frantic. "Just one more." Suddenly, the core pulsed with energy, its light intensifying as Jenkins finished the override. "Done," he cried, jumping back from the console. "The station's stabilizing." The creatures paused mid-step, their bodies twitching as the energy surging through the core disrupted their systems. One by one, they collapsed to the floor, their power sources flickering and dying. For a moment, the room was silent. Then the core let out a low hum, its energy stabilizing as the station systems rebooted. The lights flickered back to life, and the ground beneath us stopped trembling. "We did it," Vega said, his voice filled with relief. "We actually did it." I exhaled, lowering my weapon. "Good work, team." But as the tension began to fade, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. The creatures were down, the station was stabilizing, but the Titan's secrets were far from fully uncovered. "What now, Commander?" Jenkins asked, wiping the sweat from his brow. I looked at the core, its energy pulsing steadily now. "We need to report back to Dax," I said. "Let him know the station's stable. But we're not done here yet. There's still something we're missing." Jenkins frowned. "What do you mean?" I glanced at the fallen creatures, their cold, lifeless bodies scattered across the floor. These things weren't just guarding the station. They were protecting something, and I'm betting it's deeper inside the Titan. Vega sighed. "Of course there's more." I nodded, already preparing for the next move. "Let's regroup and resupply. Then we go deeper. We need to find out what they were really hiding." As we left the core chamber behind, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking into something far bigger than any of us had anticipated. The Titan's mysteries were far from solved. And whatever was waiting for us in the depths of the station, it wasn't going to let us leave without a fight. We made our way back to the main levels of the Titan, the station eerily quiet now that the immediate danger had passed. But the silence didn't bring any comfort. If anything, it made me more uneasy. There was something unsettling about how everything had fallen into place so neatly. The creatures were down, the station was stable, but what now? The answer lay in the depths of the Titan. There had to be more to this. We reached the command center where we had first disabled the primary control unit. The screen still flickered with the alien language, symbols flashing in an unrecognizable script. The data from the core backup had been successfully transmitted to the station systems, but there was something strange about the signals coming from the deepest levels of the structure. It was as though they were encrypted in a way we hadn't seen before, something ancient, buried beneath layers of alien tech. Jenkins crouched beside the console, tapping away at his handheld, trying to interface with the system once more. "Commander, I don't like this," he muttered under his breath. "We've restored the power, but these signals, they're not part of the normal station functions." "Explain," I said, folding my arms and staring at the flickering displays. "It's like the station is sending out a distress call, but not to anyone we know. It's not broadcasting to the Allied fleet or any known frequencies. It's something older, deeper. This signal's been dormant for centuries, maybe millennia, and now, thanks to us, it's awake again." Vega groaned, leaning against the wall, exhaustion finally catching up with him. "So what you're saying is, we've just alerted something ancient and possibly hostile that we're here." Jenkins didn't answer right away, but his silence said everything. I stared at the data, trying to make sense of it. We hadn't come all this way just to be blindsided by another threat. If the Titan was sending out a distress call, it meant there was something or someone it feared. And whatever that was, it could be on its way. But that wasn't our immediate concern. For now, we needed to get to the source of that signal. "Can you trace the origin?" I asked Jenkins. He nodded, his fingers flying across the console as he brought up the station's schematics. "It's coming from below us, at least 3 levels deeper than where we are now. There's an entire section of the station we haven't even touched yet." "Of course there is," Vega muttered. "It's always the last place you'd want to go." I ignored his comment and turned back to Jenkins. "Can you pinpoint the exact location?" "It looks like a control nexus, similar to the one we found earlier, but bigger, way bigger. And if I'm reading this right, it's connected to some kind of power source we haven't seen before." I frowned. "Bigger, as in, it controls more than just the station." Jenkins hesitated, then nodded. "That's what it looks like. Whatever's down there, it's more than just a control room. It might be the central hub for the entire structure, if we shut it down." "We shut everything down," I finished for him, "including whatever that signal is trying to reach." "Exactly." Vega pushed off the wall, grabbing his rifle. "Great. So all we have to do is march down into the depths of this creepy alien megastructure, shut down a control hub we've never seen before, and hope it doesn't trigger something worse." "Pretty much," I said with a grim smile. "But first, we report to Dax. We need backup if things go south." We patched through to Dax back aboard the Eclipse, detailing the situation and the possible threat from the signal. His response was, as usual, filled with gruff concern. "So let me get this straight," Dax's voice crackled over the comms. "You've stabilized the station, but now you're telling me there's something bigger underneath it all, and you've gone and activated it?" "Pretty much," I replied. Dax grunted, clearly frustrated. "You always know how to find trouble, don't you, Ryder?" "I prefer to think of it as uncovering the truth." "Well, you've uncovered something all right. I'm sending reinforcements to your position. Get to the control nexus and shut it down. Whatever that signal is, we can't risk it reaching its destination. Understood?" "Understood," I said, cutting the transmission. I turned to the others, my jaw set. "All right, let's move. We've got a long walk ahead of us." The descent was treacherous. The lower levels of the Titan were even more decayed than the ones we had previously explored, the metal floors corroded and the walls buckling under the weight of centuries of disuse. The deeper we went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. It was as if the station itself didn't want us there. Jenkins led the way, his handheld guiding us through the maze of corridors and stairwells. "We're almost there," he said, his voice tight with concentration. "The Nexus is just ahead." We reached a massive, sealed door, even larger than the one guarding the core backup. This one was different, intricately carved with alien runes and symbols that seemed to pulse with a faint, eerie light. "Looks like this is the place," Vega said, eyeing the door warily. Jenkins approached the door, scanning it with his device. "I've never seen encryption like this before," he muttered, his brow furrowed. "It's old. Really old." "Can you open it?" I asked, my voice tense. Jenkins hesitated. "I think so, but once we're in, I'm not sure what we'll find." I nodded. "Do it." He worked quickly, his fingers flying over the controls. The door let out a low groan, then slowly began to slide open, revealing the chamber beyond. It was vast, easily the largest room we had encountered so far. The walls were lined with massive conduits and machinery, all of it humming with energy. At the center of the room was a towering structure, its surface covered in alien symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. And at the base of the structure, something stirred. "Commander," Jenkins whispered, his voice barely audible. "We're not alone." I followed his gaze, my heart skipping a beat as I saw it. A figure tall, imposing, and unmistakably alien stood at the base of the structure. Its body was sleek and metallic, its limbs elongated and jointed in ways that defied human anatomy. Its eyes, if they were eyes, glowed with a cold, blue light, and its head swiveled toward us with a mechanical precision. It spoke, its voice a low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate through the very air around us. The words were alien, incomprehensible, but the meaning was clear. It was the guardian of this place, and it wasn't going to let us shut down the Nexus without a fight. We stood frozen, the alien guardian staring at us from across the chamber. It moved with a strange grace, its mechanical limbs shifting as if it weighed nothing, despite its massive size. The glow of its cold blue eyes bored into us, and I could feel the tension rising. "What's the play, Commander?" Vega muttered, his rifle raised but his finger hesitant on the trigger. "Hold fire," I whispered back, my own instincts screaming at me to stay calm. We didn't know what this thing was capable of. Charging and guns blazing wasn't the answer. Not yet. Jenkins stepped forward cautiously, his hands still hovering over his handheld. "It's reacting to us," he said quietly, his voice barely more than a breath. "But it's not attacking yet. Maybe we can communicate." I shot him a look. "You want to try talking to that thing?" Before I could respond, the alien guardian spoke again, its voice reverberating through the chamber. It sounded like a warning, though we couldn't understand the words. Jenkins frantically worked at his device, trying to match the language with any known alien dialects. "Give me a second," Jenkins said, his fingers flying over the interface. "We might not have a second," Vega grumbled, his grip tightening on his weapon. The alien's blue eyes flared brighter, and the room around us began to hum with energy. Conduits along the walls flickered to life, and I could feel the hairs on my arms standing on end as the air became thick with static. "Commander," Jenkins shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "I've got a partial translation." "Spit it out," I barked, keeping my eyes on the Guardian. It's saying that we've triggered a failsafe. The signal we restored, it was meant to summon reinforcements, and now it's waiting for them." "Reinforcements?" Vega echoed, his voice edged with fear. "What kind of reinforcements?" Jenkins looked up from his device, his face pale. "It doesn't say, but I don't think they're friendly." I cursed under my breath. Of course it wasn't going to be easy. "Can we shut it down before they arrive?" Jenkins shook his head, his face grim. "If we kill the Guardian, it'll send an emergency signal. That'll bring them here even faster." "Then what's the other option?" Vega demanded. "We need to disable the Nexus without triggering the failsafe," Jenkins said. "But that means getting close to it, and I don't think our friend here is going to let us just waltz in and do that." I gritted my teeth, weighing our options. We had to act fast. Reinforcements could already be on their way, and we couldn't risk a full-scale alien invasion. Not here, not now. "We need to distract it," I said, making my decision. "Jenkins, you get to the Nexus and disable the failsafe. Vega, you and I will keep the Guardian occupied." Vega looked at me like I was insane, but he didn't argue. "Got it," he said, his voice low and steady. Jenkins nodded, already moving toward the side of the room, keeping low to avoid drawing the Guardian's attention. "Just don't die," he muttered. "We'll do our best," I said, gripping my rifle tighter. As Jenkins disappeared into the shadows, I locked eyes with Vega. "Ready?" "Not really," he said with a half-smile, "but let's do it anyway." We moved as one, stepping forward into the Guardian's line of sight. Its eyes flared again, and this time it moved. The speed was shocking. One moment it was standing still, the next it was hurtling toward us with terrifying precision, its limbs outstretched like blades. "Now," I shouted, diving to the side as the Guardian crashed down where we had just stood. The impact shook the floor, and I could hear the whine of energy building up in its limbs as it prepared for another strike. Vega opened fire, his rifle spitting a hail of bullets at the alien's sleek frame. The rounds glanced off its armor, but they served their purpose. They drew its attention away from Jenkins. I took the opportunity to move, flanking the Guardian and unleashing my own barrage of fire. My shots weren't doing much damage, but I wasn't trying to kill it. I just needed to keep it focused on us long enough for Jenkins to do his job. The Guardian responded with terrifying efficiency, pivoting toward me with a speed that defied its size. A blade-like arm lashed out, and I barely managed to roll out of the way before it sliced through the air where I had been standing. "Commander, it's getting faster," Vega shouted as he continued to fire. "We're not going to be able to keep this up." "We don't have to," I called back. "Just a little longer." I risked a glance toward the Nexus, where Jenkins was frantically working. He was close, but the energy in the room was building. I could feel it, a deep, thrumming pulse that seemed to resonate with the very core of the station. "Jenkins, how's it coming?" I yelled, ducking under another swipe from the Guardian's blade. "Almost there," he shouted back, his voice strained. "Just keep it busy." The Guardian let out a low, mechanical growl that made my skin crawl. It turned toward Jenkins, as if sensing what he was doing. Its blue eyes flared, and the air around us crackled with energy. "Vega," I shouted, "hit it with everything you've got." Vega didn't need to be told twice. He opened fire with everything he had, the rounds slamming into the Guardian's back. It staggered, just for a moment, and in that moment, Jenkins made his move. "Got it," he shouted triumphantly. The room shuddered as the failsafe deactivated, the energy in the air dissipating almost instantly. The Guardian froze, its limbs going rigid as the light in its eyes dimmed. Then, with a low hiss, it collapsed to the ground, motionless. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, slumping against the wall as the adrenaline began to fade. "Nice work, Jenkins," I said, my voice heavy with relief. Jenkins grinned, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Yeah, well, I aim to please." Vega lowered his rifle, shaking his head in disbelief. "I can't believe that worked." I pushed myself to my feet, glancing at the now lifeless Guardian. "Let's hope that's the last of them." But even as I said the words, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. We had stopped the immediate threat, but the signal, the one we had inadvertently reactivated, was still out there, and if there were more Guardians like this one, they might not be so easy to stop next time. "All right," I said, turning to the others. "Let's get back to the eclipse. We've got a lot to report." And something told me that this mission was about to get a whole lot more complicated. As we made our way back through the vast corridors of the ancient structure, I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. The Guardian's sudden collapse had felt too easy, too simple. The station was still a mystery, and I had a sinking feeling that we had only scratched the surface. Jenkins was keeping pace beside me, his handheld still flashing with data streams as he recorded everything from the Guardian's shutdown to the layout of the alien megastructure. Vigo walked ahead, his rifle still at the ready, eyes scanning every corner for any sign of movement. The silence was unnerving. After everything we'd just been through, the quiet felt wrong. It was as though the station itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next move. "Commander," Jenkins said, breaking the silence, "I've been going over the data from the Guardian. There's something strange about the signal we activated." I raised an eyebrow. "Stranger than the thing trying to kill us?" Jenkins smirked but quickly grew serious again. "It's not just a simple distress call. The signal's more like a beacon. It's broadcasting coordinates to something, and whatever it's pointing to is moving." "Moving?" Vega echoed, stopping in his tracks. "What do you mean, moving?" "It's hard to explain, but the signal is updating its location in real time. Whatever it's connected to, it's mobile, and it's on its way here." I felt a chill run down my spine. Reinforcements were coming, just like the Guardian had said. But we didn't know what they were or how long we had before they arrived. "How long until they get here?" I asked, my voice tight. Jenkins frowned, tapping on his device. "If I had to guess, maybe a day. But it's hard to be sure. This tech is advanced. Way more advanced than anything we've seen before." Vega cursed under his breath. "A day? That's not enough time to get out of here and call for backup." "We don't have to call for backup," I said, my mind racing. "We need to finish what we started. If this station is part of some kind of invasion plan, we need to disable it before the reinforcements arrive." "Finish what we started," Vega scoffed. "Commander, we barely made it out of that last fight alive. Now you're saying we should stick around and poke the hornet's nest." "We don't have a choice," I said, locking eyes with him. "If we run, whatever's coming will follow us back to Earth. We can't let that happen. This station has to be neutralized." Vega shook his head, clearly not thrilled about the idea, but knowing I was right. "Fine. But if we're going down, we're taking as many of those bastards with us as we can." Jenkins looked up from his handheld, a glint of excitement in his eyes. "There might be another way. I've been mapping out the station systems, and I think I found something. There's a central control room deeper in the structure. If we can get there, we might be able to shut down the entire station from the inside." "How far is it?" I asked. "Not far," Jenkins said. "But there's a problem. The control room is locked down with some kind of security protocol. The Guardian we fought it was just one of many. There are more of them guarding the control room." "Of course there were." "How many more?" Vega asked, already sounding exhausted. Jenkins shrugged. "Hard to say. Could be a few. Could be dozens." I cursed under my breath. This mission was rapidly turning into a suicide run. But there was no backing out now. We had to see this through. "All right," I said, steeling myself. "We move in, we take out whatever's in our way, and we shut this thing down before the reinforcements get here." Let's hope we're still alive to tell the tale. We moved quickly, our footsteps echoing in the eerie quiet of the alien corridors. The deeper we went into the station, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The walls were lined with strange, pulsating conduits that seemed to hum with energy. Lights flickered overhead, casting long, jagged shadows that danced across the metal floor. It felt like we were walking into the belly of some great, sleeping beast. As we approached the entrance to the control room, Jenkins stopped, his face pale. "It's here," he said quietly, pointing to a massive set of doors ahead of us. The doors were unlike anything we'd seen so far. They were made of a dark, shimmering material that seemed to shift and change as we looked at it. There were no visible handles or panels, just an ominous glow that pulsed from within. "Security's tight," Jenkins said, eyeing the doors warily. "We're going to need to disable the lock before we can get in." "How long will that take?" I asked. Jenkins shrugged. "Depends. This is alien tech, after all. Could be minutes, could be hours." "We don't have hours," I said. "Get started. Vega and I will cover you." As Jenkins knelt down to work on the lock, Vega and I positioned ourselves on either side of the door, weapons ready. The air was thick with tension. We knew there would be more Guardians, and we knew they wouldn't give us the luxury of time. Minutes passed, and Jenkins worked in silence, his fingers moving deftly over the alien interface. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and I could see the strain in his eyes. Whatever this lock was, it wasn't making his job easy. "Almost there," Jenkins muttered, his voice tense. Suddenly, a loud hum filled the air, and the walls around us began to vibrate. I felt a pit form in my stomach as I realized what was happening. "They're coming," Vega said, his voice low and grim. I nodded, tightening my grip on my rifle. We didn't have much time. "Jenkins," I barked. "We need that door open now." "I'm working on it," Jenkins snapped, his voice laced with frustration. "Just keep them off me." The hum grew louder, and I could see shapes moving in the distance. More Guardians bigger than the last one, faster. Their eyes glowed an angry red, and their limbs crackled with energy as they rushed toward us. "Here they come," Vega shouted, raising his weapon. I opened fire, the sound of gunfire echoing through the corridor as I aimed for the oncoming Guardians. My rounds barely slowed them down, bouncing off their armored frames like pebbles against steel. "They're too fast," Vega yelled, his voice edged with panic. I gritted my teeth, my mind racing for a solution. We couldn't hold them off for long, not against this many. We needed that door open, and we needed it now. "Jenkins," I shouted again, desperation creeping into my voice. "Got it," Jenkins yelled back triumphantly. With a loud hiss, the massive doors slid open, revealing the control room beyond. Without hesitation, we rushed inside, the doors sealing shut behind us just as the Guardians reached the entrance. I collapsed against the wall, my chest heaving as I tried to catch my breath. We had made it. Barely. The control room was a massive, circular chamber, filled with alien consoles and displays that hummed with energy. At the center of the room was a large, glowing terminal that seemed to pulse with life. "This is it," Jenkins said, his voice filled with awe. "The heart of the station." "Can you shut it down?" I asked, my voice hoarse from the adrenaline. Jenkins nodded, moving toward the central terminal. "I'll need a minute, but yeah, I think I can do it." As Jenkins began to work, I glanced at Vega, who was still catching his breath beside me. "You think we're going to make it out of this?" Vega chuckled grimly. "I'm not placing any bets just yet, Commander." I couldn't help but smile, despite the situation. Fair enough. But as I turned back toward Jenkins, a sudden realization hit me, a gut-wrenching, terrifying realization. "Jenkins," I said quietly, "are you sure this terminal controls the station?" Jenkins looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" I took a step forward, my heart pounding in my chest. "What if it doesn't shut the station down? What if it sends another signal?" Jenkins paled, his hands freezing over the terminal. I didn't think of that." "Commander," Vega called, pointing toward one of the displays. "You need to see this." I moved toward the display, my blood turning to ice as I read the alien symbols flashing across the screen. The signal hadn't been deactivated. It had been amplified. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The terminal didn't just control the station, it was broadcasting a signal stronger than anything we had encountered so far, and the implications were horrifying. "Jenkins, can you stop the amplification?" I demanded, urgency threading my voice. He was already frantically typing, sweat dripping down his brow. "I don't know. I didn't anticipate this. If the signal is amplifying, it could be sending out coordinates to something much bigger than we imagined." "How much time do we have?" Vega asked, scanning the room for any potential exits. "Maybe minutes, maybe less," Jenkins replied, his fingers moving rapidly over the alien interface. The terminal was a complex web of lights and symbols, but it felt like time was slipping away faster than he could keep up. "We need to destroy it," I said, my heart racing. "If we can't stop it, we have to make sure it doesn't do any more damage." "But we can't blow it up," Jenkins protested, panic creeping into his voice. "That could trigger a self-destruct sequence. We'd be dead before we even made it out." "Then figure it out," I snapped, stepping closer to the console. "We need to find a way to disable the signal without destroying the whole place." Just as he nodded and focused on the console again, the room filled with an ominous sound, a low rumble that reverberated through the walls. "They're coming," Vega shouted, glancing at the sealed doors. The sounds of heavy footsteps and mechanical whirring grew louder, echoing through the chamber like a countdown. "Jenkins," I urged, fear surging through me. "You have to move faster." "I'm trying," he yelled back, his face strained with concentration. "But this system is beyond anything I've ever seen. It's not just a computer, it's a living organism." Just then, the lights above us flickered, and the room plunged into darkness for a brief moment. The console's screen flared back to life, illuminating Jenkins's determined face. "I think I've found a way," he exclaimed, hope sparking in his eyes. "If I can reverse the polarity of the signal, it might redirect it instead of shutting it down." "Redirect it how?" I asked, my pulse racing. "Back into the station's core," Jenkins explained, his fingers flying across the interface. "If we can overload the core, it should create a feedback loop. It'll collapse the signal without setting off an explosion." "But what about us?" Vega interjected, anxiety creeping into his voice. "We'll need to get clear," I said, glancing toward the doors. "Jenkins, how long until you can set that up?" "Less than a minute," he shouted, the energy crackling in the air around us. The sound of metal clanging grew louder, and I could see shadows moving outside the control room doors. Time was running out. "Vega, get ready to cover us," I said, my heart racing. "We'll make a break for it as soon as Jenkins is done." Vega nodded, shifting into a defensive stance near the door. "I've got your back." Jenkins continued working feverishly, his face illuminated by the glowing console. I could see beads of sweat forming on his forehead, and I felt a wave of admiration for him. He was our best chance, but the pressure was mounting. The rumbling grew louder, and the doors trembled as something heavy slammed against them. I could hear the Guardian's mechanical voice echoing through the metal, a warning call that sent shivers down my spine. Come on," I urged, glancing nervously at the door. I knew we had little time left before the Guardians broke through. "Almost there," Jenkins grunted, focusing intently on the console. The screen flickered as streams of data flashed before him. The door buckled under another heavy blow, and I felt the adrenaline spike in my veins. "Get ready." With a final burst of energy, Jenkins shouted, "Done. It's set to redirect the signal." "Let's go," I shouted, grabbing Jenkins's arm and pulling him toward the door. As we charged toward the exit, the doors burst open, revealing a group of towering Guardians. Their glowing red eyes locked onto us, and without hesitation, they charged forward. "Cover us," I yelled at Vega as I pushed Jenkins behind me. He opened fire, the rifle crackling with energy as he aimed for the closest Guardian. The shots impacted with a loud bang, sending sparks flying, but the Guardian barely flinched. It advanced with terrifying speed, and I quickly raised my weapon, firing at its advancing form. "Jenkins, move," I barked, shoving him toward the exit. "Get to safety." "I'm not leaving you," he protested, his voice rising in panic. "You don't have a choice. Get out," I shouted back, feeling the pressure build as more Guardians poured into the room. With a final, desperate look, Jenkins sprinted down the corridor. I could only hope he found safety. Vega and I stood our ground, firing at the Guardians as they closed in, our shots barely slowing them down. "We have to fall back," Vega shouted, aiming for the closest Guardian, whose arm was raised to strike. "Not yet," I replied, gritting my teeth. "We need to give Jenkins time." But as I fired again, the Guardian lunged, slamming its fist into the wall beside me. I barely dodged the blow, but it sent debris flying, and I stumbled back, trying to regain my balance. "Commander," Vega yelled, firing again at the encroaching Guardians. "We can't hold them off forever." I was about to argue when the console behind me began to hum, vibrating with an energy I could feel in my bones. The signal was redirecting. I could only hope Jenkins was far enough away. "Now," I yelled, making the decision for both of us. "We fall back to the entrance and regroup with Jenkins." With no time to waste, we turned and sprinted down the corridor, the Guardians hot on our heels. The air crackled with energy as they fired beams of light, narrowly missing us as we ducked and weaved through the maze of metal and alien technology. "Commander, left!" Vega shouted, pulling me away from a group of charging Guardians. We took a hard left into another corridor, the walls pulsing with that same eerie glow. My heart raced as I glanced back to see the Guardians hesitating, momentarily confused by our sudden change in direction. "Keep moving," I shouted, adrenaline pushing us forward. We needed to reach the eclipse and warn the fleet about the impending threat. As we neared an exit, the console behind us erupted in energy, sending a shockwave through the station. I felt the force knock me off balance, and I barely managed to keep my feet. "What was that?" Vega yelled, struggling to maintain his footing. "Jenkins must have triggered the feedback loop," I called back, my heart racing with both fear and hope. But the Guardians were undeterred. They barreled through the corridor, relentless in their pursuit. I fired back, my aim steady as I tried to slow their advance. The exit loomed ahead, but the Guardians were gaining ground. We had to make it, there was no turning back. "Commander, we can't stop," Vega shouted, urgency in his voice. With one final burst of speed, we leapt through the exit, the Guardians hot on our heels. I felt a surge of hope as the eclipse came into view, the ship's silhouette stark against the backdrop of stars. We sprinted toward the ship, adrenaline pumping through our veins. The doors to the hangar bay were already open, and I felt a rush of relief wash over me. "Get to the cockpit," I yelled at Vega as we reached the ship. "I'll handle the hatch." As I slammed the hatch shut behind us, I could hear the Guardians crashing into the walls of the hangar bay, their metallic bodies colliding with a resounding thud. My heart raced as I punched in the launch sequence, my hands shaking with the adrenaline of our narrow escape. "Get us out of here," Vega shouted from the cockpit, his fingers flying over the controls. With a deep rumble, the engines roared to life, and the ship began to lift off the ground. I felt the familiar jolt of acceleration as we broke free from the station's grip. "Hold on," Vega warned, and I braced myself against the console as the eclipse shot forward, leaving the alien megastructure behind. As we sped away, I risked a glance back. The station was pulsing with energy, and I could see the Guardians gathered at the entrance, their red eyes glowing in the dark. Suddenly, there was a blinding flash of light, and I felt the ship tremble as the shockwave hit us. The station was collapsing under the weight of its own signal, the feedback loop triggering a chain reaction. "Look out!" Vega shouted, pulling the ship into a sharp maneuver as debris began to rain down from the station. I gripped the console, my heart racing as we narrowly avoided a falling piece of the megastructure. The sound of metal grinding and crashing echoed in the cockpit as we raced away from the impending destruction. Finally, we broke free into the vastness of space, the station behind us now a glowing, unstable mass. As I caught my breath, I looked over at Vega, who was still focused on the controls. "Did we do it?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Vega nodded, his eyes wide with disbelief. "We got away. But we have to warn the fleet. If they were targeting us, they might still be out there." I knew he was right. We needed to regroup and figure out our next move. But for now, we had survived. The station was gone, and with it, the immediate threat. "Let's get back to Earth," I said, my voice steadying. "We have a lot to report." As we set our course for home, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Whatever had been unleashed by the megastructure would soon come for us, and we needed to be ready. We had a galaxy to defend. We exited hyperspace with a jolt, the familiar sights of Earth emerging from the depths of space. The blue planet was a beacon of hope, a stark contrast to the chaos we just left behind. But that hope felt fragile as we approached the orbital fleet. "Commander, I'm hailing the fleet," Vega said, his fingers dancing over the controls. The tension in his voice reflected the urgency of our situation. The communication screen flickered to life, revealing a grim-faced Admiral Treadway. His silver hair glinted in the overhead lights, and the lines on his face spoke of years of leadership under the strain of conflict. "What's your status, Commander Reynolds?" he demanded, his voice steady but edged with concern. I leaned closer to the screen, my pulse quickening. "Admiral, we've just escaped the alien megastructure. It was destabilizing, releasing a signal that could attract more hostile forces." The Admiral's expression hardened. "Did you manage to gather any intelligence on the source of the signal?" "Yes, sir," I replied, glancing at Vega, who was nodding in encouragement. The station was amplifying a transmission. It seemed designed to lure in something much larger than we anticipated. A heavy silence hung between us as the Admiral processed this information. "What do you suggest?" "We need to analyze the data from the terminal," I said, urgency creeping into my tone. "It might give us insight into their plans and possibly how to counteract them." "Very well," Treadway said, his demeanor shifting to one of resolve. "Bring the Eclipse into Docking Bay 3. We'll debrief and start working on a strategy." "Understood, sir," I replied, feeling a surge of adrenaline. This was our chance to regroup and prepare for the battles ahead. As we maneuvered the Eclipse into the docking bay, I felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. We had escaped, but now the real work began. The ship shuddered as it connected with the docking clamps, and the engines powered down, leaving an eerie silence in their wake. "Let's go," I said, already heading for the exit. Vega followed closely, his demeanor serious. We had no idea what awaited us on the other side of the hatch. As we stepped into the bustling hangar bay, the atmosphere was electric with urgency. Officers rushed around, discussing strategies and logistics, while technicians worked feverishly to analyze the remnants of our last mission. "Commander," a young officer approached, a tablet in hand. "We've pulled some data from the ship's logs. We're compiling everything now, but it looks like the signal was indeed a beacon." "What are we dealing with?" I asked, my heart pounding. The officer exchanged glances with Vega before answering. "The readings suggest it was broadcasting a distress signal. It may have been meant to attract allies or perhaps reinforcements." I felt a chill run down my spine. "So, we might be facing an entire fleet." "Potentially, yes," he confirmed, his face pale. I turned to Vega, who was already scanning the hangar for familiar faces. "We need to alert the rest of the fleet. If they're coming, we need to prepare." "On it," Vega said, moving toward a nearby comm station. As I watched him go, I felt the weight of leadership pressing down on me. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about protecting our home. The Admiral joined me moments later, his expression grave. "We'll hold a briefing with the senior staff. We need a united front against whatever is coming." "Agreed," I replied, steeling myself for the discussions ahead. What's our plan of action? We need to fortify our defenses and prepare the fleet for potential engagement, he said. But we also need to understand what we're up against. That data Jenkins collected might be crucial. Let's hope he can decode it quickly, I said, my thoughts racing. The fate of Earth hung in the balance. As we made our way to the command center, I caught snippets of conversation among the crew, their voices a mix of fear and determination. They were counting on us to lead them through this crisis, and I couldn't let them down. Inside the command center, a holographic display filled the room, showcasing the fleet's position around Earth. Ships of various classes glimmered in the projection, each representing a dedicated crew ready to defend our world. "Gather everyone," Admiral Treadway ordered, his voice firm. "We need to be prepared for anything." The room filled with personnel, each taking their place at the strategic table. I took a deep breath as I looked around, feeling the gravity of the moment. We were no longer just individuals. We were a united front against an unknown threat. "Thank you all for coming," Treadway began, his tone serious. "We face a grave danger. Commander Reynolds and Ensign Vega have just returned from the alien megastructure, which was destabilizing and broadcasting a signal. We believe this signal is a beacon that could attract hostile forces to our solar system." The murmurs of concern rippled through the room, but Treadway pressed on. "We've received preliminary data, but we need to act quickly. Our first priority is to analyze the information from the eclipse and fortify our defenses." "I can start decoding the data," a voice interjected from the back. It was Jenkins, looking haggard but determined. "I've already got some preliminary readings that suggest the signal was meant to attract." "Hold on, Jenkins," Treadway said, holding up a hand. "We need to ensure everyone understands the implications of this. We're facing an enemy we know little about, and we cannot afford mistakes." "Understood, sir," Jenkins replied, stepping forward. "But the longer we wait, the more time we give them to regroup." "Let's hear what you found," I said, nodding toward Jenkins. "What do you have?" He activated a small holographic projector, and a series of data streams floated above the table. The signal appears to have been a distress call, but it was also encoded with navigational coordinates. I believe it was designed to lure in potential allies or reinforcements an entire fleet of them. "How long do we have before they arrive?" Treadway asked, his expression serious. "That's the problem," Jenkins said, his voice steady. "I can't provide an exact timeline, but given the speed of their ships, they could be here within days." The room fell silent, the weight of the information settling in. I felt the tension in the air, the collective anxiety of knowing that we were racing against time. "All right," Treadway said, breaking the silence. "We need to mobilize. I want every ship on alert status, and I want all communication channels monitored. Prepare for potential evacuation procedures as well." I could see the determination in the faces around the table. Everyone understood what was at stake. "Jenkins, continue your analysis. The rest of you, get to work on our defenses," I ordered, feeling the surge of leadership coursing through me. "We need to be ready for anything." As the crew dispersed, I felt the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. We had to face an enemy we didn't fully understand, but I knew we would do everything in our power to protect Earth. "Commander," Vega said, coming up beside me, "do you think we can hold them off?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but we'll fight. We always fight." The atmosphere in the command center was thick with tension as we worked to prepare for the imminent threat. The walls hummed with energy from the various displays and consoles, each one flashing with data, reports, and schematics for our defensive strategies. I watched as officers moved quickly, their faces etched with determination. "Commander, I've got the data from Jenkins," Vega called, waving a tablet over his head as he approached me. "You need to see this." I turned to him, my curiosity piqued. What did he find? He activated the tablet, and a holographic projection materialized above the screen. It displayed the alien megastructure, highlighting specific sections that glowed ominously. "These readings show that parts of the structure were designed to channel energy, possibly to power those guardians? We think they might use similar technology in their ships. That could be an advantage for us, I mused, studying the projections. If we understand their systems, we might be able to exploit their weaknesses. Exactly, Vega replied, tapping a few buttons to shift the display to focus on a schematic of one of the Guardian ships. This model appears heavily armored, but their energy core seems to be a common vulnerability. If we can hit it at the right moment, we might disable them before they even get a chance to engage. Good work, I said, feeling a surge of pride for my crew. We had faced insurmountable odds before, and we had come through. This time would be no different. Let's get this information to the tactical teams. We need to run simulations and figure out how to implement these strategies. As I issued orders, Jenkins re-entered the room, his face a mask of urgency. Commander, I've completed the initial analysis of the signal. It was indeed a distress call, but there's more. The coordinates it was sending out point to an area of space that's uncharted. Uncharted? I echoed, my brow furrowing. What does that mean? It means there's a possibility that they could be hiding more than just reinforcements, Jenkins explained, his voice steady. There might be a hidden base or even a supply depot. Treadway, who had been listening intently, nodded. We need to explore those coordinates. If there's a base, we could strike first and eliminate the threat before they reach us. But that's a risk, I countered, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down. We don't know what kind of defenses they have in place. We could be walking into a trap. Treadway considered this for a moment. True, but we don't have the luxury of waiting. If there's a chance to intercept them before they arrive at Earth, we must take it. Commander Reynolds, I want you to lead a recon mission to those coordinates. Gather as much intelligence as possible. I felt a mix of pride and anxiety swell within me. Leading a mission meant I'd be placing my crew in danger again, but the potential payoff was too great to ignore. Understood, Admiral. We'll prepare immediately. As the meeting adjourned, I turned to Vega. We'll need to assemble a team and gather supplies for the trip. I'll start prepping the Eclipse, he replied, determination etched on his face. We'll make sure everything's ready for departure. I moved through the command center, issuing orders and coordinating with the various departments to ensure we had everything we needed. The crew sprang into action, their energy palpable. Everyone understood the stakes. This wasn't just another mission. It was our chance to defend our home. Within the hour, we were ready to depart. Vega and I boarded the Eclipse, the ship feeling like a second skin as I settled into the captain's seat. The familiar hum of the engines came to life, and I felt a sense of comfort wash over me. This ship had seen us through countless battles, and it would see us through this one as well. All systems are green, Vega reported, his fingers dancing over the controls. We're good to go. Set a course for the coordinates Jenkins provided, I ordered, my heart racing. Let's find out what we're up against. As we entered hyperspace, I took a moment to reflect on our journey. Each mission had been fraught with danger, but this felt different. We were venturing into the unknown, a place where anything could happen. After what felt like an eternity, the ship shuddered as we exited hyperspace. The stars outside were unfamiliar, a scattering of lights that felt both beautiful and menacing. I felt the weight of responsibility as I glanced at Vega. "Are we ready?" he asked, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "As ready as we can be," I replied, my gaze fixed on the viewscreen. "Let's take a closer look." We approached the coordinates, and my breath caught in my throat as the view shifted. Before us lay a massive asteroid field, fragments of rock and debris floating in the void. But nestled within the chaos was something that sent chills down my spine, a hulking structure, a base half concealed among the asteroids. "That's it," Vega said, eyes widening. "It looks like they built a base right in the middle of the field." "Keep your distance," I instructed, feeling the gravity of the moment. "We need to gather as much intel as possible without being detected." Vega adjusted our trajectory, expertly maneuvering the Eclipse through the maze of asteroids. The ship glided smoothly, its systems compensating for the gravitational pull of the nearby rocks. I focused on the base, taking in every detail. The structure was large, its metallic surface reflecting the light of distant stars. Energy signatures pulsed from it, indicating that it was operational. "Looks like they're busy," I muttered, my heart pounding. "We might have a window to scan the area." Vega nodded, fingers flying over the console as he initiated our scanning systems. The screens flickered with data, readouts revealing the layout of the base and the various ships docked nearby. "We're picking up several smaller ships," he reported. "Looks like they're heavily armed, but we also see a few that might be cargo vessels." "Let's focus on the energy readings," I said, squinting at the data. "If they're powering something, it might give us a clue about their intentions." As the scans continued, I felt a growing sense of urgency. We needed to understand their operations if we were going to prevent an invasion. The longer we stayed, the greater the risk of discovery. "Commander," Vega said, breaking my concentration, "I'm detecting an unusual energy signature coming from the core of the base. It's unlike anything we've seen before." "Can you isolate it?" I asked, my pulse quickening. "Working on it," he replied, his focus unwavering. "It's definitely tied to their operations. If we can get a visual, it might provide the information we need." Moments felt like hours as I watched the screens, tension coiling in my gut. Finally, Vega's expression shifted to one of surprise. "Got it. I'm establishing a visual link." The main screen flickered, and a live feed from a surveillance drone appeared. The drone floated silently through the base, capturing images of the interior. I felt my breath catch as I watched the footage unfold. There, at the heart of the base, was a massive energy core, pulsating with a vibrant blue light. Surrounding it were several alien technicians, their movements swift and deliberate as they worked on the machinery. "What are they doing?" I whispered, leaning closer to the screen. "It looks like they're harnessing energy from the core," Vega said, eyes glued to the feed. "But why? What are they planning?" Just then, a loud alarm blared through the base, and the drone's feed flickered with static. I felt my heart drop. We had been detected. "Vega, we need to get out of here," I shouted, adrenaline flooding my system. "Now!" He frantically adjusted the controls, but the ship had already begun to shudder as the base activated its defenses. Energy beams shot out from the structure, illuminating the darkness with flashes of light. "We're not going to make it," Vega yelled, panic creeping into his voice. "Trust me, we will," I shouted back, gripping the controls as I pulled the ship into a sharp turn, narrowly avoiding an incoming blast. The Eclipse groaned as we weaved through the asteroid field, the energy beams lighting up the space around us. My heart raced as I pushed the engines to their limits, desperate to escape the clutches of the base. "We've got incoming," Vega warned, his eyes wide as he tracked several smaller ships launching from the base, their weapons charged and ready. "Divert power to shields," I commanded, sweat beading on my forehead. We had to survive this, and if that meant sacrificing speed for defense, then so be it. The ship shuddered again as another energy beam struck our shields, sending vibrations through the hull. Alarms blared, warning us that our shields were weakening. "Commander, they're gaining on us," Vega shouted, his fingers flying over the controls. "We can't outrun them forever." "We don't need to outrun them," I said, a plan forming in my mind. "We just need to buy some time, prepare for evasive maneuvers, and keep our shields up." I expertly guided the Eclipse through the treacherous asteroid field, my instincts kicking in as I focused on dodging enemy fire. I could hear the blasts of energy whizzing by, narrowly missing us as I executed sharp turns and sudden drops. "Incoming fire," Vega yelled, bracing himself against the console as the ship jolted. "Hold on," I called out, my voice steady despite the chaos. We were close to the edge of the field, and if we could just make it past the last few asteroids. The Eclipse bucked violently as another blast struck our shields, and I felt the impact reverberate through the ship. "We're almost there," I shouted, determination fueling my resolve. With one final maneuver, I guided the ship through a narrow gap between two massive asteroids, barely avoiding a collision. As we shot out into open space, I turned the ship hard to the left, narrowly evading the pursuing ships. "We did it," Vega shouted, a mix of relief and exhilaration in his voice. "But they're still coming after us." "Then let's give them something to chase," I said, my mind racing. "Activate the cloaking system." Vega nodded, and with a quick command, the ship's exterior shimmered, becoming nearly invisible against the backdrop of stars. The pursuing ships shot past us, their sensors unable to lock onto our position. "We're safe for now," I said, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "But we need to get back to Earth and warn the fleet. They're planning something big, and we have to be ready." Vega turned to me, a mixture of awe and respect in his eyes. "You were incredible out there, Commander." I shook my head, focusing on the task ahead. "We all did our part, but now we need to ensure that our next move is the right one. They're not just a threat, they're a warning." As we plotted our course back to Earth, I couldn't shake the feeling that the encounter had changed us. We were no longer just defenders of our planet. We were hunters, ready to take the fight to the enemy. "Let's get back," I said, resolve strengthening my voice. "We've got a lot of work to do." As we cruised through the vastness of space, the eclipse hummed softly around us, a familiar comfort amidst the uncertainty. The tension from our recent escape still clung to the air, a reminder of how close we had come to being captured or worse. Vega sat at the controls, his focus intense as we navigated our way back to Earth. "How long until we arrive?" I asked, leaning back in my seat and taking a moment to breathe. "At this speed, we should be back in approximately 6 hours," he replied, his fingers dancing over the display. "Assuming we don't encounter any more surprises." I nodded, a knot of anxiety forming in my stomach. "We need to prepare for a debriefing. The information we gathered could change everything." Vega turned to me, his expression serious. "What do you think they're planning at that base? It has to be more than just a simple mining operation." "I don't know," I admitted, rubbing my temples. "But whatever it is, it can't be good. We need to get our fleet ready to counter whatever they're scheming." We lapsed into a tense silence, the hum of the ship the only sound between us. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were missing something crucial. The energy core we had seen was powerful, and the way the aliens were harnessing it spoke of a larger strategy, one that could put Earth in grave danger. As we crossed the vast distances of space, I thought back to our mission. The aliens were methodical and well prepared. They wouldn't make a move without calculating the risks. If they were going to invade, they would come armed to the teeth. "Commander," Vega suddenly said, breaking my reverie, "I'm running some simulations based on the data we collected. It looks like they've significantly upgraded their technology since our last encounter." "Upgraded?" I repeated, my interest piqued. "In what way?" "I'm detecting new energy signatures in their ships," he explained, his eyes glued to the screen. "It's possible they've enhanced their shields and weapons. If we don't adapt our tactics, we could be in serious trouble." "Send that data to the fleet command," I ordered, my mind racing. "We need to ensure everyone is aware of these changes. We can't afford to underestimate them." As he relayed the information, I gazed out at the stars, lost in thought. How could we combat an enemy that was continuously evolving? I remembered the alien technicians working on the energy core. They had been calm and focused, a stark contrast to our frantic escape. They were building something, and whatever it was, we needed to stop it. When we finally entered Earth's orbit, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The blue planet below sparkled invitingly, a reminder of everything we were fighting for. I took a deep breath, steadying my resolve. "Prepare for landing," I instructed. "Let's get this briefing underway." The Eclipse touched down smoothly on the hangar deck, and we disembarked quickly. The atmosphere was charged with urgency as we made our way through the bustling corridors of the base, officers and technicians moving with purpose. Upon entering the command center, I spotted Admiral Treadway pacing at the front of the room, flanked by a group of high-ranking officers. He stopped as we entered, his expression grave. "Commander Reynolds, you're back," he said, his voice laced with concern. "What did you find?" I exchanged a glance with Vega before stepping forward. "Admiral, we have critical intelligence regarding the alien base. They're preparing for something big." The room fell silent, all eyes on me. I took a deep breath and began to recount our encounter, detailing the energy core and the alien operations we had witnessed. "Their technology has advanced significantly," I finished, my gaze meeting Treadway's. "We can't afford to take them lightly. If they're planning an invasion, we need to mobilize our fleet immediately." Treadway nodded, his face stern. "I agree. We must prepare for the worst-case scenario. I'll have the fleet on high alert, but we need to know exactly what we're dealing with." "I recommend a coordinated strike on their base," I suggested, feeling a sense of urgency. "If we can disrupt their operations, we can buy ourselves more time to strategize." The officers around the table exchanged glances, weighing the implications of my proposal. Finally, Treadway spoke again. "We'll need more intel before we can make any moves. I want a small team to head back to the asteroid field for reconnaissance." "Let us go," Vega interjected, stepping forward. "We're familiar with their operations and can gather additional data without drawing attention." Treadway considered this, then nodded. "Very well. I'll authorize the mission, but you must be careful. We can't afford to lose you again." As the meeting concluded, I felt a mixture of adrenaline and dread. We were heading back into danger, but this time we had a plan. With each piece of information we gathered, we were getting closer to understanding our enemy. Back on the Eclipse, I and Vega gathered our gear, preparing for the next leg of our mission. I glanced at him, noting the determination in his eyes. "You ready for this?" I asked, a hint of a smile tugging at my lips. "Always," he replied, checking the ship's systems. "Just don't expect me to drive this time. I prefer living." With a laugh, I prepared the ship for takeoff, knowing that we were heading into the unknown once again. The stakes had never been higher, but I felt a renewed sense of purpose. We were going to protect our home, no matter the cost. As we sailed through the vast expanse of space, I could feel the familiar hum of the Eclipse beneath me, a comforting presence amidst the uncertainty ahead. The stars outside sparkled with the brilliance of a million suns, but my focus remained on the mission at hand. Vega was at the controls, his concentration palpable as we navigated back toward the asteroid field. "Approaching the coordinates," he announced, his voice steady. "All systems are green, and sensors are active." I glanced over at the display, watching as the asteroid field loomed closer. The sheer size of it was daunting, a chaotic mix of rock and debris, but it was also a hidden sanctuary for our enemies. "Let's keep a low profile," I said, my tone serious. "We don't want to attract any attention this time." "Got it. Engaging stealth systems now," Vega replied, fingers flying over the controls. The ship's exterior shimmered, blending with the dark void around us. As we entered the field, I could feel the tension in the air. Memories of our previous encounter flooded my mind, narrowly escaping the alien base, the frantic chase through the asteroids. This time, we were prepared. This time, we would gather the intel we needed. The sensors pinged softly as Vega maneuvered the ship through the treacherous maze of asteroids. I peered at the displays, scanning for any signs of activity from the alien base. It was eerily quiet, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. "We're almost at the location of the base," Vega said, keeping his voice low. "Initiating scan for energy signatures." The ship vibrated slightly as the scanners swept across the area. I held my breath, watching as the readings began to populate the screens. My heart raced as I saw the familiar energy signature from the core we had encountered before. "There it is," I said, pointing at the display. "And it looks like they're still operational. We need to figure out what they're doing with that core." "Locking on to the signal," Vega replied. "Let's see if we can get another visual on the base." The holographic feed activated, displaying the alien structure once more. I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding wash over me as I watched the scene unfold. The base was bustling with activity. Alien technicians moved about with purpose, their gestures swift and precise. "Looks like they're ramping up operations," I murmured, squinting at the screen. What could they be planning? Vega adjusted the feed to focus on the energy core. "There's a significant amount of power being drawn from it. It's almost like they're preparing for something monumental." Before I could respond, the alarm on the ship blared, cutting through the tense atmosphere. My heart dropped as I turned to Vega. "What's happening?" "Scanners picking up multiple ships approaching from the base," he shouted, urgency lacing his voice. "They're launching a patrol." "We need to get out of here," I ordered, adrenaline surging through me. "Engage evasive maneuvers." Vega's fingers flew over the controls as he guided the Eclipse through the asteroid field, weaving between the massive rocks with expert precision. The alien ships, sleek and ominous, began to emerge from the base, their energy weapons charging. "Incoming fire," Vega shouted, his voice barely audible over the blaring alarms. I could see the energy beams slicing through space, illuminating the dark void around us. "Take evasive action," I yelled, my heart racing. "We can't let them pin us down." The ship shuddered as a blast grazed our shields, sending a jolt through the hull. I felt the impact in my bones, the reality of our situation crashing down on me. We were outnumbered and outgunned. "Can we cloak again?" I asked, my voice tense. "We're too close to the base. The systems are still cooling down from the last activation," Vega replied, frustration evident in his tone. "Then we need to create a diversion," I shouted, my mind racing. "Prepare to launch the decoy drones." Vega's fingers moved quickly, activating the drone system. "Drones are prepped and ready." "Launch them on my mark," I commanded, my heart pounding. 3, 2, 1, launch. The drones shot out from the Eclipse, streaking through space with flashing lights. I watched as the alien ships diverted their attention, following the decoys into the depths of the asteroid field. "Now's our chance. Let's get back to the base and gather more intel," I urged, my determination surging. Vega nodded, guiding the ship back toward the heart of the asteroid field. As we approached the base, I kept a careful eye on the scanner. The alien ships were distracted, but we needed to be quick. "We need to find a place to dock without being detected," I said, scanning the area for suitable landing spots. "There's a vent system on the side of the base we might be able to use." "Locking in the coordinates," Vega replied, his focus unwavering. The Eclipse glided toward the base, and I held my breath as we maneuvered into position. With a soft thud, we made contact with the docking bay, our cloaking system masking our presence. "We're in," I said, relief washing over me. "Let's gear up and get ready to disembark." As we prepared to leave the ship, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. We were stepping into the lion's den, but we had to know what the aliens were planning. I looked at Vega, who was checking his equipment with a steady hand. "Are you ready for this?" I asked, my voice low. "Always," he replied, a glint of determination in his eyes. We exited the Eclipse, slipping into the shadows of the docking bay. The interior was dimly lit, the air heavy with a scent of machinery and something foreign. I could hear the faint hum of energy flowing through the walls, a constant reminder of the power the aliens were harnessing. "Stay close," I whispered, moving cautiously through the bay. "We need to find a way to access their main control center." Vega nodded, his eyes scanning the area for any signs of movement. We crept toward a set of doors marked with alien symbols, the sound of chatter filtering through the cracks. I hesitated, listening intently. "Can you understand what they're saying?" I asked, knowing that Vega had studied their language during our earlier encounters. "It's hard to make out, but they seem to be discussing the core's energy output," he replied, his brow furrowed. "They're expecting a significant surge soon." "A surge?" I echoed, the implications sending a chill down my spine. "What are they planning to do with that power?" Before we could ponder further, the door slid open, revealing a corridor lined with alien technology. I motioned for Vega to follow, and we slipped inside, our movements silent and purposeful. As we crept down the corridor, I marveled at the advanced technology surrounding us, screens flickering with data, consoles pulsing with energy. The aliens were not just mining, they were crafting something grand. We reached a large chamber filled with alien machinery, the energy core at its center. I could see the alien technicians working diligently, their expressions serious and focused. They were monitoring the core's output, adjusting controls and taking readings. "We need to get closer," I whispered, inching toward the edge of the chamber. The sight of the core was mesmerizing, a swirling mass of energy that pulsated with life. "What do you see?" Vega asked, his eyes wide with awe. "It's incredible," I breathed, my mind racing. "But we need to understand its purpose. If we can get a reading from that console, we might learn what they're planning." We edged closer, carefully avoiding detection. The technicians were too engrossed in their work to notice us, their attention fixed on the data scrolling across the screens. Suddenly, one of the technicians turned, his eyes narrowing as he caught sight of something out of place. "Intruders!" he shouted, and chaos erupted in the chamber. "Run!" I yelled, grabbing Vega's arm as we dashed toward the exit. The alarms blared, and red lights flashed as the technicians scrambled to respond. We burst through the doors, adrenaline surging through my veins. "We need to get back to the ship," I shouted, my mind racing as I navigated through the winding corridors. "They'll be right behind us," Vega warned, glancing over his shoulder as we sprinted down the hall. "We'll use the ventilation shafts," I shouted, spotting a grate overhead. Without hesitating, I jumped and pried it open, gesturing for Vega to follow. He climbed up, and I followed, pulling the grate shut behind us just as I heard the sounds of footsteps rushing toward us. The shaft was cramped, but it offered a momentary reprieve from the chaos. "Where to now?" Vega asked, his voice echoing in the tight space. "We need to get back to the docking bay," I said, listening for any signs of pursuit. "From there, we can access the eclipse." We crawled through the shaft, the sounds of the base echoing around us. The atmosphere was tense, and I felt a sense of urgency building within me. We couldn't afford to be caught. The fate of our home depended on the intel we had gathered. After what felt like an eternity, we finally reached the entrance to the docking bay. I carefully pried open the grate and peered out, making sure the coast was clear. "It looks safe," I whispered, slipping out into the bay. The eclipse stood ready, a beacon of hope in the dim light. "Let's move," I urged, sprinting toward the ship. We climbed aboard, and I wasted no time powering up the systems. "Initiating takeoff sequence," Vega said, his fingers flying over the controls. The ship hummed to life around us, and I felt a rush of relief. "Brace yourself," I warned as we rocketed out of the docking bay, leaving the alien base behind. The vastness of space stretched out before us, a reminder of the battle we still had to fight. As we entered the asteroid field once more, I took a moment to gather my thoughts. We had escaped, but the danger was far from over. The information we had gathered was critical, and we needed to analyze it before making our next move. "Plot a course back to Earth," I instructed, my mind racing with possibilities. "We need to inform the fleet about what we discovered." "On it," Vega replied, his expression serious. "But they'll know we were there. They won't let us get away so easily." "We'll be ready for them," I said, determination filling my voice. "We've faced worse odds before, and we'll face them again. This time, we'll be one step ahead." As the eclipse raced toward Earth, the weight of our mission pressed heavily on my shoulders. The information we had gathered from the alien base was crucial. It felt like a ticking time bomb in our hands. We needed to decipher their plans before it was too late. Vega's focus was palpable as he piloted the ship through the asteroid field, deftly maneuvering to avoid any stray debris. I stood beside him, my mind churning with the implications of what we had seen. The energy core, the advanced technology, everything pointed toward a massive undertaking by the aliens, one that could endanger our entire civilization. We'll be back in less than an hour, Vega said, breaking my thoughts. We need to prepare for the briefing with command. Right, I replied, pulling up the data we had collected on the screen. Let's analyze this intel. There must be something here that reveals their plans. As we worked together, the numbers and graphs swirled before me, a mix of alien technology and energy readings. It was a language I was beginning to understand, and the more I studied it, the clearer it became. Here, I said, pointing to a spike in the energy output. This indicates a significant surge in power production. They're planning something, and it's going to happen soon. Vega frowned, his brow furrowing. Could it be an offensive maneuver? Are they preparing to strike Earth? I don't know, I admitted, the knot in my stomach tightening. But we can't take that chance. We need to inform the fleet and prepare for an immediate response. Just then, the ship's alarm blared, a sharp tone that cut through our concentration. I felt my heart drop. What now? Multiple ships detected on an intercept course, Vega said, his voice steady despite the tension. They're closing in fast. Can we outrun them? I asked, adrenaline surging through me. Not with this ship, he replied. We need to fight. Then let's make sure they don't follow us back to Earth, I said, determination flooding my veins. Prepare for engagement. Vega initiated the ship's defensive systems, and I felt the familiar hum of energy as we powered up the weapons. We'll have to lure them away from the planet, he said, glancing at the scanners. If we can draw them into the asteroid field, we might have a chance to outmaneuver them. I nodded, formulating a plan. I'll take the helm. You focus on targeting their ships. Let's make it look like we're trying to escape. With a firm grip on the controls, I accelerated the Eclipse toward the approaching alien fleet. The ships were sleek and menacing, their hulls glimmering in the starlight as they cut through space. I could see their energy weapons charging, the unmistakable glow signaling their intent. Here they come, Vega shouted, a hint of excitement in his voice. I swerved the Eclipse sharply, dodging the first volley of fire. The ship shook violently as the blast grazed our shields, but I pushed us deeper into the asteroid field, weaving between the massive rocks with precision. Keep an eye on their movements, I called back to him. The alien ships followed, their formations breaking as they attempted to flank us. I could see the lead ship gaining on us, its weapons primed and ready. Vega, target their engines, I commanded, adrenaline coursing through me. On it, he replied, his fingers flying over the controls. Firing now. The Eclipse shuddered as our weapons discharged, the energy blast striking true. The lead ship erupted in a shower of sparks, its engines flickering before it began to drift. But there were more behind it, and they were closing in. 2 more ships approaching from the left, Vega warned, urgency lacing his tone. We need to split them up. I pulled hard on the controls, sending us into a sharp dive beneath a massive asteroid. The alien ships followed, but their momentum made them susceptible to the terrain. One ship veered too close to the rock face, colliding with it and exploding in a brilliant flash. Nice shot, I shouted, feeling the rush of exhilaration. But there were still 2 ships on our tail, and they weren't backing down. Re-engaging weapons, Vega called out, locking onto the remaining ships. We need to finish this quickly. I pushed the Eclipse to its limits, navigating through the maze of asteroids while Vega unleashed another barrage of fire. One of the ships took a direct hit, its shields failing and debris flying. I could see the crew scrambling inside, desperation evident in their movements. Let's end this, I said, adrenaline surging through me as I steered the ship toward the last remaining alien vessel. Prepare for a final strike. Firing, Vega shouted, and the energy blast erupted from our cannons, hitting the ship squarely. The alien vessel trembled, its systems failing as it spun out of control before finally disintegrating in a burst of light. Breathing heavily, I pulled the Eclipse up and out of the asteroid field, the immediate danger behind us. The stars twinkled like diamonds, a stark contrast to the chaos we had just faced. That was too close, Vega said, exhaling deeply. But we did it. Yeah, I replied, still catching my breath. But we need to get this intel back to Earth. They're going to come looking for us. I plotted a course for our home planet, my mind racing with thoughts of what lay ahead. We had narrowly escaped this encounter, but the threat remained. The aliens were relentless, and I knew they wouldn't stop until they achieved their goal. As we approached Earth, I could see the blue planet glistening in the distance, a reminder of everything we were fighting for. The weight of our responsibility pressed on my chest, but I was fueled by the knowledge that we had valuable information that could turn the tide. The command center came into view as we entered the atmosphere, and I felt a surge of hope. We would debrief the fleet, share what we had learned, and prepare for the next battle. Humanity would rise to the challenge. We always did. The Eclipse touched down with a gentle thud, and I wasted no time disembarking. The command center was buzzing with activity, officers moving swiftly as they processed the information from our recent encounter. "Commander Reynolds," Admiral Treadway called out, his expression a mix of relief and urgency. I was beginning to worry. "We have vital intel," I replied, moving quickly to his side. "The aliens are planning something significant. We need to mobilize the fleet immediately." Treadway listened intently as I relayed our findings, his expression turning grave. "A surge in energy output. This could mean they're preparing for an offensive." "Exactly," I confirmed, my heart racing. "We need to act fast. If we can disrupt their plans before they launch their assault, we might stand a chance." "Get the fleet commanders in here," he ordered, his voice steady. "We'll need a full briefing. I want every available ship on standby." As the officers gathered, I felt a sense of unity among us, a shared purpose to protect our home. We were more than just individuals. We were a collective force, ready to face whatever the aliens had in store. Once everyone was assembled, I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders once more. We've just faced an alien threat that is unlike anything we've encountered before. They are preparing for a major offensive, and we need to be ready. I shared the data we had collected, detailing the energy readings and the implications behind them. The room was silent as the officers processed the information, their expressions a mixture of determination and concern. "Commander, how do you propose we counter this?" one of the fleet commanders asked, his brow furrowed. "We need to disrupt their operations," I replied, my mind racing with possibilities. "If we can target their base and disable the energy core, we can cripple their plans before they even get off the ground." Treadway nodded, a look of determination in his eyes. "I'll authorize a strike team to infiltrate their base and take out the core. It's risky, but it may be our best shot." I felt a surge of hope as the plan took shape. We were not just going to defend ourselves. We were going on the offensive. "I want to lead the strike team," I said, my voice firm. "That's a dangerous proposition, Commander," Treadway cautioned. "You've already risked your life once." "This is our best chance," I insisted. "I know their operations better than anyone, and I can ensure we succeed." After a moment of deliberation, Treadway nodded. "Very well, but you'll have to take a small team with you. We need to ensure you have backup." I quickly assembled a team of trusted officers, Vega among them. We gathered our gear, preparing for the mission that could determine the fate of Earth. "Let's do this," I said, looking at my team. "We're fighting for our home, and we're not backing down." With our plan in place, we boarded the Eclipse once more, ready to head back into the fray. The stakes had never been higher, but I felt a sense of determination rising within me. We would face this threat together, and we would prevail. As we launched into the depths of space, I knew the battle ahead would be the defining moment for humanity. We had already proven our resilience, and now it was time to show the galaxy just what we were capable of. As the Eclipse hurtled toward the alien base, the tension in the cockpit was palpable. The stars blurred into streaks of light as we engaged the warp drive, my heart racing with the adrenaline of what lay ahead. The plan was risky, but it was our only shot at preventing a catastrophe. "Approaching the target zone," Vega announced, his fingers dancing over the controls. Stealth systems are engaged. We should be undetected for now. Good. Let's keep it that way, I replied, scanning the readouts as the alien base materialized ahead. It loomed ominously, a sprawling complex of metallic structures, pulsating with energy. I could feel the weight of the mission pressing down on us. As we entered the outskirts of the base, I initiated the cloaking protocols. The ship shimmered as the hull adapted, rendering us nearly invisible to the alien sensors. Stay sharp, I cautioned. We don't know what kind of defenses they have in place. Vega activated his scanner. We've got movement ahead 2 guards. I'll take the left, you handle the right. Got it, I replied, signaling Reed to follow me. We crept forward, hearts pounding as we approached the guards, who were oblivious to our presence. Now, I whispered, springing into action. I engaged my combat knife, swiftly dispatching the guard before he could react. Reed followed suit, his movements precise and efficient. With the guards down, we quickly searched their bodies for comms devices and weapons. I slipped a sidearm into my holster and motioned for us to continue down the corridor. As we moved deeper into the base, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own, and every sound echoed ominously in the silence. Here we go, Vega whispered, glancing at the scanner. The energy core should be through this door. I pushed open the heavy door, and we stepped into a vast chamber filled with a pulsing blue light. The core loomed before us, a massive structure humming with energy. We need to disable it, I said, approaching the core. Kavanaugh, can you interface with their systems? Give me a moment, he replied, pulling out his portable device. As he worked, I glanced around, scanning for any signs of incoming threats. Suddenly, alarms blared, and red lights flooded the chamber. We're out of time, I shouted. Kavanaugh, hurry. I'm trying, he called back, sweat beading on his forehead. The tension was palpable as the seconds ticked by. Vega scanned the area, his eyes darting. We've got company. They're sending reinforcements. Just a little longer, Kavanaugh urged, fingers flying over the interface. As the door burst open, a group of alien soldiers poured into the room, weapons raised. Fall back, I shouted, firing at the nearest alien. The shots rang out, echoing in the chamber. Reed and Vega engaged, taking cover as we fought to hold our ground. I could see Kavanaugh focused on the core, desperation etched across his face. Almost there, he yelled, as I ducked behind a column, narrowly avoiding incoming fire. The aliens were relentless, their aim precise. I took a deep breath, calculating my next move. Vega, cover me, I shouted, sprinting toward Kavanaugh. I reached him just as he finished the sequence. Got it. It's disabled, he exclaimed, a look of triumph on his face. Now let's get out of here, I shouted, grabbing Kavanaugh's arm and pulling him back. But as we turned to flee, a deafening roar echoed through the chamber. The core began to destabilize, energy surging violently. It's going to explode, Vega warned, his voice urgent. We need to move now. With the aliens closing in, we sprinted for the exit, adrenaline coursing through our veins. I could feel the heat rising behind us, the chamber shaking as the core's energy flared. We burst through the door, and I led my team down the corridor, heart pounding. The alien soldiers were in pursuit, and I could hear their shouts behind us. Keep going, I urged, pushing us faster. We can't let them catch us. We raced through the halls, weaving in and out of obstacles, the ship's hangar coming into view. As we neared the exit, I saw the Eclipse waiting, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. We made it, Kavanaugh gasped, relief flooding his voice. But just as we reached the hangar, the walls shook violently, and I realized the core had started its chain reaction. Get to the ship, now. We climbed aboard, Vega immediately powering up the systems. We're going to need to be fast, he warned, fingers flying over the controls. Engage thrusters, I shouted, glancing back as the hangar began to crumble. The aliens were pouring in, but we were ready. I took my position at the weapons console, ready to defend our escape. As the Eclipse powered up, I fired the rear cannons, targeting the incoming aliens. The blast ripped through their ranks, giving us the time we needed. "Initiating launch sequence," Vega called out, and I felt the ship vibrate as we lifted off the ground. The hangar exploded behind us, the shockwave propelling us forward as we shot into the sky. The stars stretched before us, and I felt a rush of triumph and relief. "We did it!" Kavanaugh exclaimed, exhilaration coursing through him. But our celebration was short-lived. As we entered space, I spotted the alien fleet regrouping, their ships forming a blockade. "They're not giving up that easily," I said, my voice steely. "We've got to warn Earth," Vega shouted, adjusting our course. "But we'll have to fight our way through." "We can do this," I said, gripping the controls tightly. "We've come too far to back down now." The alien ships began to advance, weapons charging as they prepared to fire. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," I commanded, adrenaline pumping through my veins. As we engaged in battle, I felt a sense of unity with my team, a shared purpose driving us forward. We would fight for our home, for humanity, and we would show them that we would never back down. Vega expertly maneuvered the Eclipse, dodging incoming fire while I targeted the nearest alien ship. With a quick burst from our cannons, we blew it apart, sending debris scattering into space. "Two more ships closing in," Vega warned. "We need to split them up." I executed a sharp turn, darting toward the asteroid field nearby. "Follow my lead," I shouted. The aliens were relentless, but we had the advantage of surprise. We weaved between the asteroids, the alien ships struggling to keep pace. I turned to Vega, a determined glint in my eye. "Prepare to fire on my mark." "Ready when you are," he replied, his focus unwavering. As we broke through the field, I turned sharply, lining up the remaining ships. "Now," I commanded, and Vega unleashed a barrage of fire. The alien vessels were caught off guard, their shields failing under the onslaught. In a matter of moments, we had decimated the remaining forces. "That's how it's done," Kavanaugh cheered, his relief palpable. But we couldn't celebrate yet. The remaining alien fleet was regrouping, and we had to warn Earth about the impending attack. I punched in our coordinates, guiding us back toward the planet. As we entered the atmosphere, the command center came into view, a flurry of activity as the fleet prepared for battle. I felt a surge of determination. We would share our intel and rally our forces. Vega guided the Eclipse to a safe landing, and we wasted no time disembarking. The command center was buzzing, and I made my way to Admiral Treadway, urgency fueling my every step. "Commander Reynolds," Treadway called, his expression serious. "What happened out there?" "We disabled their energy core, but we need to act fast," I explained, breathless. "The aliens are regrouping. They plan to strike Earth soon." "We'll mobilize the fleet immediately," Treadway declared, his eyes narrowing with resolve. "Prepare for an all-out defense. We'll meet them head-on." I felt a rush of pride at the commander's words. We were ready to defend our home, and we would fight with everything we had. As the fleet assembled, I stood alongside my team, determination coursing through me. We were ready to face the oncoming storm, and we would not back down. The countdown began, and as the ships launched into space, I felt a sense of unity with my fellow humans. We would protect our home, fight for our future, and show the galaxy that humanity would not be extinguished. With every ship ready, we set our sights on the stars. The alien fleet was approaching, but we would stand our ground. The battle would be fierce, but we were ready. As I gripped the controls of the Eclipse, I knew that this was just the beginning. We were humanity, and we would face whatever challenges lay ahead.